You're listening to Dave the IT Guy, coming to you from an undisclosed location. Do not be afraid. Dave is here to help with all of your security and hacking questions and news. We own them now, and we are in control. Sit back, turn it up, and let's get started in 3, 2, 1.
That's right. I am Dave the IT Guy, and you are listening to Bring Your Own Security Radio. Hey, today is a new day. First of all, a new season. We took some time off. I took some time off to just refresh, decide if the IT security field really needs me to do a podcast. And what I realized is that I need to do it for me to feel better, for me to put out the information that I think is important. And so I hope you feel the same way on an episode-to-episode basis. If you don't, feel free to hit me up on X, formerly Twitter, of course, at BYOS Radio. Let me know. Let me know content or topics that you would like, and let me know what you didn't like. I'm okay with that too. I've got a thick skin. So today, coming back into this, I want to talk about what's old is new again. And what I mean by that is I want to talk about how old vulnerabilities are coming back to haunt us on a day-to-day basis now. And I've got a couple other topics that I'll bring up as this 30 minutes goes through. And by the way, on an ongoing basis, I'm going to try to keep these to little 30-minute bite-sized podcasts. I may be 1 or 2 minutes short, or I may go 1 or 2 minutes over. But by and large, we're going to spend 30 minutes every episode and talk about things that I think are important. So let's get into the initial topic for today, and that is old vulnerabilities. Now, we all know that the average company goes vulnerabilities. They say, ooh, all these criticals and highs. We need to get those right now. And the informationals, lows and mediums, not so much. They're not that important. I mean, honestly, with the total number of vulnerabilities out there today, what company, what security team has the willpower to go out and secure, tens of thousands of vulnerabilities almost on a monthly basis? I mean, nobody really has that kind of bandwidth and throughput in their environment. The cloud-based stuff is an interesting topic too, and we'll get to that because I've got some thoughts there too. But let's talk about the old stuff. There are older vulnerabilities, especially like with Cisco, IIS, just about everything, Microsoft, of course, but even Linux flavors. People or researchers are finding vulnerabilities that existed years ago, but nobody knew about them. And now they're getting released as, in some cases, 0 days, or at least proof of concepts. And they are, at the very least, they are problematic. An example, Cisco ASAs have a vulnerability from 2008 that was initially rated as like a 4-point something on the CVSS 2 scale. The CVSS 3 scale bumped it up a little bit to like 5.2 or some other middle-of-the-road nonsense. But what has happened is that a group of Russians was able to daisy chain this particular vulnerability. And I don't want to get into the specifics of the vuln and how they did it, because for those that don't know how to do it or don't know what the vulnerabilities are, I'd hate to give those hackers the idea of what to do. But suffice it to say that this particular group of hackers took a vulnerability from 2008 that by and large wasn't even touched across most ASAs because of its low severity level or medium severity level. And they daisy chain that with some scanning and some other efforts to basically take 3 vulnerabilities and put them in order to where they could do one thing, basically scan and find you. They found you, and then they went through either a brute force or possibly a phishing campaign or some other method to get a set of passwords. And then they get logged in, and then they use this particular vulnerability to get started, get a foothold. And then basically a VPN concentrator or an ASA firewall, if you get in and you have the right user's credentials, of course, your lateral movement at that point is crazy open. And that's exactly what happened. So in the case of old vulnerabilities, we need to take a step back and we need to decide, what vulnerabilities are truly, necessary to go after. There are some what's considered critical or high vulnerabilities identified by, the vendors that have no active exploitation. Now, you're probably robbing Peter to pay Paul, but if you know something's being actively exploited and you have it in your environment, why would you not fix that versus something not being actively exploited? Conversely, you need to apply a little bit of threat intelligence, a little bit of common sense, and that's a subjective term. And you need to decide, what's of value to you and your environment. Not everybody has the same needs or requirements as far as what should be first. It is going to vary based on your individual needs. There are tools that allow you to prioritize. There are some tools that even take threat intelligence and combine the vulnerability information from the vendor. They combine known attacks. They combine known POCs, etc., and they put all that together to rescore a vulnerability. Now, they are lacking still, most of these tools at least are lacking, with the ability to stack on top of each other, to daisy chain on top of each other. So, if anybody were to make that type of software where you could daisy chain an attack based on vulnerabilities and expose that through a risk-reward system, you'll make millions. So there's my idea to you for free. If you can develop some type of software that does that, man, you'll make millions. But I digress. So to step back, I'll plug one. I got no skin in the game here, but a company that I once worked for used Risk Sense, which is now owned by Ivanti. So what Risk Sense does is take all the known information that they can find. They correlate that data with, Talos and other Palo Alto and other organizations' threat intelligence. They combine it with their own internal research. They combine the CVSS scoring, and they say, okay, based on all of these factors, and based on the fact that our internal researchers and hackers could do this with that information, we're going to rescore this as a whatever, up or down. That allows you to kind of take a real-time look at your environment and decide, oh man, that medium or low, or even that informational that Cisco or Microsoft or whoever put out, and decide what to do for yourself with that information. And again, what I find important to my environment may not be the same for you. So that's where a tool like Risk Sense. There are some open source tools that do that. There are other paid tools. Risk Sense is not the cheapest. as I recall. But they certainly are a leader in, if you look at the Gartner quadrants, Magic quadrants, et cetera, they're certainly very highly ranked and very highly regarded in that way. So, again, thanks for tolerating me on that topic. But I really feel like if you're not revisiting your old vulnerabilities, then you're opening yourself up for something new. I'd also would want to state that if you developed a vulnerability program 3 years ago and somebody reads it, says, yep, puts their name on the log that says reviewed this day and this day, are they really reviewing it to today's standards? Or are they just reviewing it and saying, yep, that's what we still do, let's sign off on it, right? When it comes to a review of those kind of policies and procedures, SOPs, you really need to review them for current quantitative information and make sure that it's going to still do what you want it to do. So there you go. Old is new, and there we go. When it comes to that piece, a second topic I wanted to bring up today was, now that you have your vulnerabilities scored and your risk and all that good stuff, tied in with that, you probably have an incident response plan somewhere in your company. At least I hope you do. My goodness, I hope you do. An IR plan is great when you write it up and you send an email out to everybody with your PDF and you say, okay, so-and-so, this is your job, this is your job, this is your job. And when maybe you do a disaster recovery test, maybe you test your backups, right? But are you testing the plan? Are you using a tabletop exercise? Are you involving all of the groups of people that you need to involve? Are the legal people on the call with you during an incident response event? You need to have someone from legal represented so that you can have that level of protection as a work product legal coverage. You need them to say they being you and your company, were talking to their lawyer at the time. You can't openly use this. You want your public communications people to be involved. You need them to understand terms, what those words mean, how they fit into the IT security world, and how they fit into the world of your company. And you need to make sure that your executive leadership also understands all of those terms, because they're the ones ultimately that are on the hook, with a board of directors or with investors or whomever that happens to be. If they get out there and say one thing, but they meant something else and didn't know the difference, they could actually hurt you more than help you. So you want to keep that in mind. The who that's involved is important. Let's see, we talked about your public information people. You talked about, your social media people. When do they get involved? When do you start posting that you have an outage or that you have some kind of issue? What words do you use? Are you going to have them put on their social media that, hey, we've been hacked, we're down? Or are they going to say something like, well, with the MGM, we've had an IT event? Picking and choosing these words carefully up front and testing that process with those people will make sure that in the scrum of a high pressure, high urgency situation, those folks don't go, off script, so to speak. So you need to practice those terms. You need to make sure they understand what's going on. And they need to be involved, at least with a conference call or what we call a bridge call, or in person, as the case might be, depending on what happens. Of course, you want your IT people involved, because if something got ransomed or ransomware or something like that, they had to start rebuilding servers or rebuilding desktops or whatever the case might be. They might have to start recovering data. their data recovery, which is where you start testing DR, they may have had a bad design, and the ransomware trickled over into the backups, and now your backups are encrypted. Now what are you going to do? You need to test how long that's going to be to get that data back, called a recovery time, and then you got recovery process, right? So, and then a data point, like at what point in time did we recover from? Was it we took our last snapshot or backup at 1 o'clock yesterday? We took it every 2 hours, so we're only losing 2 hours of data plus recovery time. You need to understand all of these, and everybody else needs to understand that. One of the worst things that you can do is not teach people these terms and what these terms mean. For example, you are the server administrator, and you are trying to rebuild 8 virtual server VM boxes, and each one of those VM boxes hosts 10 servers. Now, you have to turn around and answer 20 phone calls, and possibly your phone's going to be buzzing with email coming through your phone, through the cloud, if it's not knocked down. People saying, how much longer is this going to take? You got a company of 1,000 people. Even if 50 of them's asking you how much longer is this going to take, that's time consumption that you don't have time for. You need to get your work done. Who's going to run interference for you? What are they going to say? So again, there's a lot of different moving parts. And we haven't even talked about the security people yet. What does your security team have the capability of doing? Do you have a one-man show, a one-person show? I'm sorry. Do you have a 3-person security team? Do you got 20? How big is your team? Are they forensics people? They can start digging into memory artifacts and other artifacts, take network traffic sniffing PCAPs and understand what happened and where it came from. Do you have a third party that you've prepaid for, and how do you get in touch with them? And if your servers are going to be down, how are you going to get them the information? What if you can't send an email? You certainly cannot fax a PCAP file. So how are you going to get that? If desktops are down, or if the network is down, you can't even log into like your Gmail or Yahoo account to send the data, because your computer is down, the network's down. So all of these things need to be considered, and all of the right people need to be brought involved. If you think that some of this stuff is too preposterous, ask MGM. They started off with an effective 10-minute phone call to their help desk. That help desk person gave out a password that person should not have been given out. The hackers used that password to get in, do some of their stuff, and then they started pivoting. And that's why you saw originally things like our credit card machines are down, our room key situation is offline, and then later on, their slot machines are offline, and then the ATMs are offline, and then the reservation computers are offline, the websites go offline. They can't do anything but take cash. Anything that's electronic is toast. Now, they have Las Vegas, they've got down in Biloxi, Mississippi, MGM has servers, listen to me. They have casinos in Ohio, all over the place, right? How did it go from point A to point B to point C, et cetera, and spread? Some of it was pivoting. Some of it is shared services, which is a cloud, which I did promise we'll get to. And some of it is just bad luck, and poor design, poor architecture. But let's jump into that cloud-based side. How many people know that if you have AWS or Google, that when it comes to your devices, whatever you want to call them, you can call them your web application firewalls, your WAFs. You can be your servers. They can be your VPCs. They can be whatever they are, right? You have your devices. Did you know that AWS, at least specifically, is only responsible for the actual WAF service to be up and running. They're not responsible for any changes that you make, meaning any rules that you put in place. They're not going to be responsible unless you pay them to help you for any kind of outage, downtime, unless it's their fault. You know, like, hey, their whole data center went offline for some crazy reason, then that's a different story. It's up to them to fix that. Servers are a great example. So many people think, well, I've got Amazon, AWS. You know, I've got a server. I don't need to patch it. I don't need to do anything. Not true at all. Amazon is not going to patch your servers, your operating system, your third-party apps, or even the application that you built to put on there. That's entirely up to you and your people to do that. And that gets missed so much. I don't know how many times I've consulted with a company and find that they hadn't done anything in the years since they've had AWS, or in some cases Google, because they didn't understand what cloud truly meant. So, you know, one of those things to keep in mind is there's a lot to happen with an incident response plan. The plan looks great on paper. If this happens, I'm going to rebuild my servers, I'm going to recover my data. You know, my recovery time is going to take me 4 days. I'm going to lose 4 days of data plus 2 hours, and I'll be good. But how do you recover? How do you get your data back? How do you put that information out? In the meantime, how do you invoice your customers? How do you service those customers? How do you stop from losing those customers? How do you convince them that their data is safe? And what if it's not safe? What if data got exfiltrated and then got encrypted away from you? Then what? You know, how much of that is going to kill your business or put you out of business? Lots of things are involved with putting up an incident response plan. None of it is just a quick one-pager. So if you've got people that just need a one-pager, just explain it to them. I don't know what to tell you with that one. So that's a lot. I know that's a lot of information. I'm only keen to keep this, like I said, to about 30 minutes. We're about 23 minutes into this. Clearly, there's so much more about both of these topics that could be said that I will, at a later episode, I will break it down to even more in depth on especially the tabletop exercise, the in-depth plan. I mean, I could speak for, a couple of hours just on setting up a tabletop exercise, who to get involved, what it would look like, what it would sound like, the curveballs that you might get thrown in the middle of it. All of a sudden, what if, I got a great one for you. I had this happen to me. What if you're on the phone with a vendor and you're getting help because of an incident and it's getting late in the day, and all of a sudden you've got either your own people who are wanting to go home, or you have people on the vendor side who say, okay, I'm going to hand you off to so-and-so. At what point are you willing to accept letting that vendor hand you off? And then that other person has to get up to speed with whatever's going on, especially on day one of an event. Now you've got to step back, kind of waste a little bit of time getting the other person up to speed and hoping that they have the skill set to actually continue whatever path you've been on. Same for your internal people. Are your people going to tell you it's time for me to go home? Are they unwilling to work overtime? Are they unwilling salary people to not stay more than maybe an hour or two extra? There are a lot of different things from a personnel perspective. And even if you have to have somebody from every group there. What if you do a tabletop exercise, or you distribute the PDF of your IR plan, and your public affairs, public information people send somebody down, and that person says, wow, I didn't realize doing an incident response was this involved. And I'm sure glad I came to this today. And then 5 months down the road, that person is off work, gone, doesn't work there anymore, on vacation, whatever. And now somebody who's never been through this type of stuff has no idea what to do. How often do you retrain? How often do you set the task up to where, hey, so-and-so, you've been taught this. It's up to you to go and pass your information, your knowledge that you learned in this tabletop exercise to your next person. Do you just assume they're going to do that? Or is that a requirement? So again, more stuff to think about. Whew, that's about it. I'm going to cut you a break. I'm not going to throw anything more at you on these topics. There's a lot, and there's so much more. Next time around, we're going to talk about the value of going to an in-person conference or a meetup versus a smaller event versus online events, and where can you get your value. And I've got a lot to say about that. I've been to smaller regional events. I've been to Black Hat for more than a decade. I've been to DEF CON more than a decade. I've been to RSA a lot. I can't keep saying them all because, different B-sides events around the country. So there are a lot of different types of events. And shout out to @TrustedSec. They used to have DerbyCon down in Kentucky, and unfortunately that ended. But that was one of the best, what I guess I would call a medium-sized event on the books. I mean, Dave Kennedy and his peeps, man, you guys got to, I know I can't say you got to, but I hope something comes that's not the end for you with that type of stuff. We're going to talk about some tool decision. How do you map out and plan if you truly need a tool? And I don't care if it's paid for or open source. That part's irrelevant to me. But, sometimes you just need a tool to help you automate some stuff or to do some stuff. And I've got quite a bit of stuff I can talk about there. I even got a decision matrix that I will blank out some of my previous decisions. And maybe I'll even keep one where I fully decided on something and show you the guidelines, what I used to decide on that something. And I'll tweet it out before we go, or I'll put it as a Vine on Vines, or I don't know, Paths and Facebook and wherever else I can think of. I don't know. LinkedIn. All right, that's it. We're 28 and a half minutes into this. I appreciate you listening today. Stay tuned. I will publish another episode. Today is Wednesday, the 20th, I think. Yeah, let's go with the 20th. And so look for me about every 3 to 4 days for about the next 2 months. Then after that, I will be posting once a week. So until then, I'm Dave, the IT guy. This is Bring Your Own Security Radio. You can find me on all the major podcasting apps, Apple, Spotify, Spreaker, I can't even think of it, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, you name it, I'm on it. Check it out. Reach out. Until then, stay safe and as secure as you can. Nothing is unhackable. Don't get too stressed if you can help it. And stay safe. Goodbye.